other community called Malay because they didn't come out of their rural compounds. They were living as a farmers. The next one, after independence, what is happening? I'm going to discuss about the post-colonial situation. After independence, see the multi-ethnic alliance, UMNO, MIC, MCA, who were the leaders and leading the the independent government in 1957. They were, see, the UMNO, MCA, MIC were the three ethnic groups based political parties which led to Malaysia's independence in 31st August 1957. And they formed the government in the name called Alliance. Later it was named as BN, Barisan Nasional. They have been ruling since 1957. See, the multi-ethnic alliance is being led by UMNO, a Malay majority party, and also MIC, the Indian political party, and also MCA, the Chinese political party. Three political parties have been leading the nation since independence, but UMNO, given its numerical Malay population, is a leader in the ethnic alliance. The other two minor groups, MCA and MIC, though they are leaders in the alliance, but they are puppets in the hands of UMNO, because Malaysian political system is based on ethnicity-based politics, in which these two minority groups, they could not play a role given their numerical numbers, given their microscopic numbers. Then, after independence, the main problem with the ruling majority of Malays, they wanted to take over the whole administration in the from the hands of Chinese and Indians. So they were trying to Malayize the whole system. That's called Malayization of civil service happened, Malayization of public sphere, like economy, because Chinese were dominating in the colonial economy. So in order to compete with the Chinese, they wanted to create Malay Bhumiputera business community. For that, they created a kind of device called New Economic Policy. It's called Malay Economic Nationalism, in which the quotas were allocated for the majority Malay. No country has affirmative action for majorities. Only Malaysia has affirmative action in order to integrate their Malay race into the national economy. So it is very strange. This policy was agreed by the minorities because this policy would be scrapped after 15 years. But the policy has been continued till now in the different forms. NEP became a never-ending policy. Today they have a national development policy. After that, now they have a new vision policy. See, the affirmative action did not come to an end. It is really impinging the Indian interest in the economy. In 1970, the Indian used to be 22% in the public service. Today, it is the professionals have come. So I'm just due to lack of time, I will not tell everything, but I have data with me how the Malayization has happened in the Malaysia. See, the Indian community is in such a sorry state because of the Malay-oriented policy, and also the later part now, 1990s, they face the problem of Islamization and the religious nationalism of Malays that is affecting the cultural interest of Indians. So I want to cut short my presentation because the time limit is very much. So I cannot go further. So I can answer questions if you are in terms of clarification. Now let me present the post S. Vaidyanathan to begin his speech.
Mr. was is Indian citizen from Tamil Nadu, living in Delhi. He came to Malaysia and wanted to interview me, but now the next speaker will be Sri Vedamurthy, who is well known now not only in Malaysia but throughout the world. And he is the leader of the Hindra, and you have all heard about it. And Vedamurthy and I have been associated very long, right from his youth days. And I don't have to speak more about him. I'll hand the mic over to Vedamurthy.
Paper of Mr. Mahalingam is available on our website www.hrdi.in. So you can read it from there also.
Mahalingam is living here in India or in Malaysia?
Jawaharlal Nehru University.
New Delhi.
His paper is available on our website. All the speeches which have been delivered over here would be available on our website tomorrow onwards.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know I have limited time.
10 minutes.
10 minutes, okay. So,
Everyone is feeling hungry, so I think you can conclude this session by 1:30.
I'm hungry for
And
human
if you,
rights.
if you don't conclude it at the cost of our country.
Okay, so I think most of you were there yesterday at the event, and I'm now wondering what can I say in 10 minutes. Basically, the Indian population, totaling about 2 million in Malaysia, looks up to India for its support for the future. I mean, for the current and for the future. India has left us for a long time. I did say yesterday, India achieved independence in 1947. The whole country was celebrating in 1947. But they forgot the 800,000 Indians they left behind in Malaysia. And our status within that 10 years, from 1947 to 1957, was uncertain. And in 1957, we had no choice but to adopt to whatever conditions that were given to us. Mahalingam did mention about a provision in Article 153 of the Malaysian Constitution, which gives privileges to the majority Malay communities. And it says that those privileges should be managed or controlled by the Malaysian king. But how much of those provisions, percentage of special privileges given to the Malay community remains a state secret. No one knows. They are not accountable to Parliament, and the Prime Minister implements policies in favor of the majority Malay community and disregards mainly the Indian community who suffer the most, simply because we are a community who are not settled with land. Our main problem is land. Now, any community that is being transported and starts a settlement in a new country needs land to settle. That is basic. Even when the blacks were taken from Africa and settled in America, they were given land. Today, there are no social problems. There are different kind of social problems, but they were settled with land. Our problem is mainly because we were not settled with land, though in the minutes of proceedings in the Legislative Assembly in 1902, it clearly states that one of the ways to encourage the Indians to come and resettle in Malaya is by way of offering them land upon the completion of their indenture period. And earlier, some laws are even earlier than 30 years ago. Now, using these provisions, the government has systematically demolished close to about 10,000 temples since independence, and I think these are serious that we should all seriously condemn the actions of the Malaysian government. Simply by declaring these temples as illegal, I think it's constitutionally wrong, because Article 11 of the Malaysian Constitution says every community has a right to practice their religion. It's a very vague provision. I would say Article 11 is a very vague provision, but the fact that we had a right to remain there was never taken into account. New laws were formulated to make these temples illegal and to officially and openly cleanse them. I have seen, as a lawyer, I have seen documents that were given to me by temple owners to say that their temples will be cleansed. It is nothing but socially cleansing this community. And close to about 800,000 people have been socially cleansed from their background. Today, most of them remain urban poor and the underclass. There are no economic programs for the upliftment of this community. Though the country spends hundreds of billions in their economic programs for every 5 years, close to about 400 billion Malaysian ringgit are spent for economic programs, but these communities are not included in the economic development community. I've given instances yesterday, but due to lack of time, I could only say that close to about 800 people have been ejected from their background, and what comes with that is demolition of their temples, demolition of their schools,